I loved playing with dolls. To be honest, I never truly had a childhood. I went through a lot. And somehow I became a singer. I love lyrical songs, especially folk ones. And I'm still performing because a person of the people has no right to get tired. I was born at the end of 1929. Until I was 18, I lived near a meat factory in Katon Karagay. My father was the second secretary of the district party committee. That is where they took him from. He was arrested and executed. Since it was a border zone, we were no longer allowed to remain there. As the family of a repressed man, we were deported to Semey, where my mother's only brother, Muhammad Karim, lived. We stayed in a barrack until 1940. In 1937, my father was taken away, and with him, my childhood ended. I never truly had one. From that moment on, I had to help my mother. I had no time to play with dolls or run around with other children. When my father was arrested, I was only 7. That was the end of my childhood. We lived in a country where the slogan was, everything for the front, everything for victory. We performed for the wounded in hospitals and helped them write letters to their families. Later, we worked at a meat factory. We would place boxes under our feet, stand on them, and work at the machines. First, I was in the intestine processing department, then in catgut manufacturing. Everyone had gone to the front, only the elderly and children remained. My aunt, Saruer, my mother's younger sister, worked in the intestine processing department as well, and another aunt worked in the sausage manufacturing. Sausage manufacturing room was cleaner, but in the intestine processing department we had to work with acids to clean the intestines. Our hands would turn bright red and bleed. There were not enough workers, so my aunt would give me tasks and I would help her. I stood at the machine, dipping intestines into acid, cutting them into pieces, and passing them along catgut manufacturing. I went through it all. Even before I became a singer, I would jingle those cans and dance to their sound, as if it were music. Sometimes that caused defects in the work. That happened too. I also worked at a timber mill, in the cooperage, making boxes and barrels. I had many jobs. I had to try everything. I look like my father. He originally came from the Abralı lineage. Our true ancestral last name should have been Baygunisov. Our grandfather, Shortanbay, was blind. He could not see at all. Our grandmother, my father's mother, held the entire household together. She did the laundry and managed the home. During the famine, both of them passed away. After that, my father and his younger brother left for Semey. They traveled together without any documents. My father was about 8 years old and his brother was only 5. In Semey, they found a relative, our uncle Nabi Tulegenov. He worked as a loader at the Musin flour mill. When the boys appeared on his doorstep, he could not hold back his tears. He embraced them and kept repeating, "How did you find me?" From the age of 10 or 11, my father began helping him at the Musin mill. He was taken on as an assistant worker. He had to find work, but he had no documents. They asked him, "What last name should we write down?" He said, "Use Tulegenov as it is." That was how he took his relative's last name. And we have been Tulegenovs ever since. After my father was gone, they would ask me, "Why don't you just take your mother's last name? She's Mansurova. Why remain Tulegenova? You could become Mansurova instead." But my mother was firm. No, her father was Tulegenov. She is Tulegenov's daughter. And she never allowed me to change it. I remember it well. It was the spring of 1948 in Semipalatinsk, the final day of an amateur arts competition. To be honest, juries were quite exhausted by then. And then suddenly a fragile, charming young girl appeared on stage. From the very first notes Bibigul sang, I was deeply moved, even though her voice was still technically untrained. Her timbre amazed me, and I knew at once that she needed professional vocal training. There was a writer, Serebrikova. When she saw my amateur performance, she said to me, "You need to train. You have a beautiful voice. Its timbre reminds me of a certain Italian singer. I will work with you for a while." The common people are an inexhaustible source of talent. Only a year ago, this young woman worked at the Semipalatinsk meat factory. Today, Bibigul Tulegenova is a student at the Alma-Ata Conservatory. That was how I joined the amateur arts and received such high praise. Everyone wondered, where did she come from? We traveled to the villages looking for talents, and she came to us herself. Ahmed Zhubanov brought me onto the stage and said, "My dear, you have a great future. You must study." And I only had a 7-year education. "That's all right," he replied. "We have many students like you. We will help you." It was a difficult time, the post-war years, but little by little we received support. I told them my mother was ill. She had suffered from brucellosis after working in the slaughtering department. There were 4 or 5 children at home, and I was the only one working. "It's all right," she said. "Your mother will receive your salary and you will study." Slowly, I got used to it. It was difficult, of course, especially the theoretical subjects. How was I supposed to know them? My true teacher was Professor Nadezhda Nikolaevna Samyshina, a professional singer, a theater soloist, and a people's artist. Fortunately, she came into my life, and thanks to her, I became a professional singer. I inherited much from my parents. My mother had a beautiful voice. She sang folk songs all the time, and that is how I learned many of them. Later, when I worked at the radio, there was a singer named Rabika Yesimjanova. She was a simple and sincere person. I learned a great deal from her as well, and added many songs to my repertoire. Sadly, they're all gone now. My mother, Rabika Yesimjanova, Galina Iosifovna, Nadezhda Nikolaevna. All of them are gone. I am the only one left. I suppose it is all about the love and gratitude of the people who helped me reach this level. It is all thanks to the people. There were many singers far more distinguished than I was, many with higher titles, but today they are barely remembered. Yet everyone knows the name Bibigul Tulegenova, even children. I suppose it is because their parents know me. Otherwise, how would they?
Я очень люблю лирические песни, особенно народные.
I have a deep love for lyrical songs, especially folk ones. In them I feel the soul of my people, the vastness and the great spaces of my native land. I am always on the road, performing in cities and villages, bringing to my audiences the finest works of our composers. I remember we traveled to Armenia. I gave a solo concert there. I stepped onto the stage and saw Jusibek Yelebekov, Garifullah Kurmangaliev, and Shara Zhienkulova sitting in the audience. I was terrified. I thought, oh, they're going to tear me to pieces. I remember it clearly. The first half was classical music. The second half was devoted to folk songs, Kazakh, Russian, Tatar, Armenian, Georgian, Ukrainian, so many different ones. People usually bring back souvenirs from abroad, but my souvenir is a song. Wherever I go, I bring a song back with me and perform it at home. That is my gift to my people. For the second half, I came out in my national costume and sang folk songs. The very first one was Qara Torgay. I could see Yelebekov listening with his head held high and his eyes closed. The concert was over. Everyone came up to congratulate me. Armenian women were asking, "Do you have Armenian blood in you? You sing in Armenian so beautifully." And then suddenly Jusibek Yelebekov walked in. There were tears in his eyes. He opened the door and said, "My dear, your Qara Torgay today, your Kazakh folk songs." I swear, among all our singers, I have never heard a performance like this. Just one small note, don't sing Qara Torgay, sing Kelede. as if Qaratorgay is actually approaching you. Keep repeating it until it arrives. Qaratorgay. I still remember how he took out a small piece of paper and wrote a few lines for my song. Before that, I used to sing, "Oh, give me your ring as a gift." He said, "Try this instead. Is it made of copper or gold or bronze?" How could my heart ever accept a person who is unkind? He wrote 2 verses for me. From that day on, I have always performed them on stage. Her uniqueness lies in the beauty of her timbre. I have always said that a person's inner world shapes their voice. She possesses a voice that is truly one of a kind. A singer's timbre depends greatly on their inner self, their spiritual culture. In Bibigul Akhmetova's voice, one can hear her depth, her intellect, and the vastness of her nature. When an artist sings, they reveal themselves exactly as they are, and we can feel it. Even in her recordings, we sense the warmth of her heart and her love for her people. Her talent allowed her to perform on the greatest European stages, yet she remained devoted to her homeland. That is a priceless quality. There were few who could equal her. For instance, Miroshnichenko at the Bolshoi Theatre, Rudenko. Here, Nizhnikova, but Bibigul Tulegenova is special. She is irreplaceable. In 1995, Bibigul Akhmetovna, Yermek Sirkibayev and I traveled to London. A grand concert was held there to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Abay Kunanbayev. It was organized by our remarkable writer, Ralan Seysenbayev, who had also established the House of Abay in London. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. By a resolution of United Nations, the year 1995 was declared the year of Abay. There is a big Barbican Center in London. It has a magnificent world-class hall, a town hall. There we held our concert dedicated to Abay, performing with the orchestra of the Prince Charles III. I structured the program carefully. I began the evening myself, followed by Marat Bisimgaliev, then Yermek Sirkibayev with Bibigul Tulegenova as the grand finale. The concert culminated with the folk song Bul Bul.
Мен сізге айтайын, толып тұрған халық, ағылшындар, олар өзі...
To be honest, it was a sold-out show. The British are reserved people. They take their time before they applaud. But when Bibigul Tulegenova performed Bul Bul, the audience gave her a standing ovation that lasted for 30 minutes.
Мен сол кезде біздің қазақтың мынау өлеңінің шыңы.
At that moment, the pinnacle of Kazakh poetry and music swept me away.
жүрегімді лүпілдеп
My heart felt as if it would leap out of my chest, and tears of joy welled up in my eyes.
қарасам ермек аға да тұр.
And then Yermek Sirkibayev said to me, "Our precious Bibigul." She showed them what a Kazakh song truly is.
Қазақтың әнін деп.
Бала кезімнен есімде біз ауылда тұрғанда
I remember back in my childhood, in our village, we had a square-shaped radio.
үйімізде. Сонда
It often broadcasted Kazakh songs.
тұратын.
Usually as a child, I used to run around non-stop. But when I heard Bul Bul by Bibigul Tulegenova, I froze right there.
Бір жерде қатып қалдым ғой.
I stood there, motionless, for 3 or 4 minutes, just listening.
Тұрып тыңдадым. Сопраноға арналған ән, бірақ меніңше ол
It was a work for soprano, but to me, it was a complete aria.
оның ішінде
It had 2 verses and a cadenza at the finale.
ең соңында коданың
A cadenza is not merely an ornament, it is found only in arias, in coloratura passages.
былай әннің нені болмайды.
These are very high, very difficult notes. They cannot be reached by the power of the voice alone. For that, you need intellect, you need heart, you need courage.
Бірлерде болады. Өте жоғары ноталар. Өте қиын, өте қиын. Бірақ оны тек қана былай күшпен ала алмайсың. Оған ми керек, оған жүрек керек. Батылдық керек.
Let's skip the worldless part and move here. So shall we leave Qazaqstan part and move straight to the ending?
Мәдениет саласында мынау күндеушілік көп қой. Бірін-бірі жетіп бағып жүреді. Кім қайда сүрлігеді, кім қайда құлайды. Бірақ мен Құдайға шүкір, мәдениет саласында сүрліккен жоқпын.
In the world of arts, there is much envy. Everyone watches one another, waiting for someone to stumble. But thank God I never stumbled in my art. I would step onto the stage and perform solo concerts for an hour, sometimes 2. Back then I didn't realize that by doing so I was uplifting the inner culture and the spiritual world of the village workers. They provided us with bread and meat, and we were supporting them with songs and music.
Әнмен күймен оларды көтеруіміз керек қой. Біз анау таң көтеріп жүргенде
When Tselinograd was suffering from a drought, there had been no rain all summer. The harvest burned out, and not a single sack of grain was collected. We arrived with our concerts. We gathered the people and said, "Unfortunately, this is what happened. This year we will fill the warehouses with songs, and next year you will fill them with grain." That was how we lifted people's spirits. We worked in the freezing cold and in the intense heat.
Orada da болдық.
Meetings with a beloved actress are always a pleasure. Today, even more so. Today, the people's artist Bibigul Tulegenova has come to her audience as a candidate for the High Commission. And then, Bibigul performed a song for the voters. From 1953 until my retirement, that is 75 years, I worked in the world of arts. Until 1971, I performed with the Kurmangazi Orchestra. One day, returning from a tour, I discovered that I had been transferred from the Philharmonic back to the theatre. I asked, what will I do at the theatre? After 15 years, my repertoire is entirely different. I don't have a repertoire for the theatre. I went to the Central Committee. At that time, I was a deputy. As it turned out, in 1971, the theatre was to be granted the title of academic, but they were short of one People's Artist title to qualify. That is how I returned to the theatre and worked there for nearly 15 more years. It was the time of the Soviet Union. We traveled abroad a lot. No matter where we performed, we were welcomed with great warmth. Before each concert, crowds would gather. People were curious. They would examine our costumes and our musicians. For them, it was a major event. And we would step out and say, "Good evening, friends. In the Soviet Union, there is a republic called Kazakhstan. We would like to introduce you to our culture." Bibigul's wonderful songs resonate in every corner of our vast motherland, across the countries of Europe and Asia, Africa and America.
Африки и Америки.
Io penso che
I have worked with the world's greatest artists, yet very rarely have I encountered performers of such level as Bibigul Tulegenova. Her voice, her technique and her professionalism are exceptional. She is a legend of the opera world. It would be wonderful if the young performers of such a remarkable country as Kazakhstan followed in her footsteps. Bibigul Tulegenova is the embodiment of a true professional artist. She is a multifaceted personality. I deeply respect her not only for her art, but also for her human qualities.
bellissimo paese, questa bellissima nazione, potessero seguire le sue orme.
He loved me dearly. He loved my voice. He had an affectionate nickname for me, Bibigulicha. He would invite me to play in his film. I was cast in 2 of them. I was told that in the movie Our Dear Doctor, I would have a small but significant role. I agreed and performed the Spring Waltz. In the film Angel in a Tubiteka, the song was originally performed not by me but by Bakit Ashimova. However, no matter where I traveled, people would beg me, please, sing Mama. I would reply, that wasn't me performing, but people keep insisting. Having seen the film, they were convinced it was my voice, so I made a recording with an orchestra in my rendition. They would even insist, but it was you. I would laugh and say, no, it wasn't me. Later, I told Bakit, well, now I am singing your song. I worked at the conservatory for 25 years. Even now I remain a consultant. Occasionally I visit, work with the students and observe how they study and how the young teachers work. I continue to work. A person like me must not grow tired. A person of the people must work until their very last day. Her pedagogical gift is unique. If you tell her, your student is falling short here, she doesn't argue. She silently takes notes and says, we will get it done. Everything will be fine. She's an artist of the union level, yet she never says, I know everything. She never asks, why are you criticizing me? She knows how to listen. That is true greatness. Once I wanted to invite her daughter, the wonderful singer Mariamgul, to join our staff. I mentioned this to Bibigul Ahmetovna. She replied, why? I'm already working there. People will start saying, look, they've even found a place for the daughter. There will be too much talk, Shahimardan. But I insisted. Mariamgul was highly educated and I needed a vocal ensemble, chamber music and future teachers. I hired her, going against Bibigul Ahmetovna's wishes. And she became a magnificent singer and an outstanding teacher. Most of the time she designed her own stage looks herself. She did her own makeup and styled her own hair. She and her daughter, Mariamgul, frequently performed on stage together. They would visit fabric stores, select materials, and create beautiful concert outfits. As children, we were always curious to peek into their bedroom. All sorts of stage dresses were hanging there. Of course, for opera performances, the costumes were prepared by professional designers. But as for the concert gowns, they came up with the design and sewed them themselves. I love Bibigul Ahmetovna dearly, both as a singer and as a person. Even though formally I am not her student, I still look up to her as my mentor. Bibigul Ahmetovna is hard-working and always supportive of young artists. Once she gifted me soprano sheet music from her own repertoire. This speaks volumes about the generosity of her soul as an artist.
Кәсіби әншілер, олар тек қана бұлай көрсетпей, периферия жағынан
Professional singers on stage possess the ability to see everything through peripheral vision, yet they never let it show.
Ол дұрыс емес қой.
You cannot simply stand there and look around. That would be wrong.
Былай бақылап тұрады дирижерді.
While singing, you look at the audience, but at the same time you must feel the conductor and stay in sync with the orchestra.
Деп ойлаймын,
It is a complex process. To perform on the same stage as Bibigul Tulegenova is a great privilege.
меніңше бақыт.
We have had many joint performances.
Бердік.
Our last concert took place at the Astana Opera, where she performed the aria of Qazakh.
Сонда жібектің ариясын айтқан. Сонда бүгінгі дейін
And still, her voice remains unchanged.
Бибигул Ахметовна лирика колоратуралық сопраноның иесі. Әрине, ондай дауыстар өте көп. Лирика колоратуралық біз білеміз, итальяндық опера әншілерінде, француздық. Жалпы барлық шетелде ондай лирика колоратуралық бар. Ал неге біздер мысалы осы
Bibigul Tulegenova has a lyric coloratura soprano.
Қазақтың ұлттық.
Of course, there are many such voices among Italian and French opera singers.
Қазақ ұлтқа сай.
But what makes her truly outstanding? It is the profound national timbre in her voice, characteristic of the Kazakh people, a velvety, warm, tonal color.
Вокалдық өнерімен біз
She succeeded in uniting her natural talent with the academic vocal school.
арияларды тыңдаған кезде
Whether performing folk songs or opera arias, her voice is always instantly recognizable.
айрықша диапазоны
Her range is vast and her upper register sounds exceptionally pure.
айтылған ноталары тұнық.
I copied the recordings she gifted to me in Belarus and gave them to students at the music academy so they can learn to sing like that. I have distributed the recordings she gifted me among the students at the Belarusian State Academy of Music. Her vocal style, her school, and her culture of performance, along with her depth of thought, refinement, and human ability, serve as an example to many. Your students are truly fortunate to be able to learn from such a legendary figure. The Bibigul Tulegenova International Competition in your country offers so much to young talents. It is held with a symphony orchestra, a grand event and a rare opportunity. In Belarus, we once held a Christmas opera competition, but it was never continued. Organizing an event of this scale is no simple task, yet it is essential for the growth of young performers. I do not know how others work. I have worked hard all my life, and if these two instruments, my piano and my voice, are not in harmony, nothing will come of it. There was always a sense of creativity in our home. Every morning would begin with my grandmother's vocal exercises. Her voice would resonate throughout the entire courtyard. Our neighbors were artists themselves. Nurgisat Lindiyev lived on the 4th floor, Olja Suleimanov on the 6th, and the renowned architect Yuri Ratushny on the 5th. When I was little, I always slept beside my grandmother. I saw how her vocal training was always combined with physical exercise. She never wavered from this habit. They are all so sweet to me. I love them all, my sweet darlings. The doors of our home were always open, and the house was always full of guests. Her students held their lessons there, the table was always set, and her cooking was delicious. Despite her fame to us, she has always been, first and foremost, a caring and kind person. Everyone has their own definition of happiness. For some, it lies in a husband. For others, in work. My happiness is in my work. I have never lived at anyone else's expense, nor have I relied on anyone to carry me. Even when I was married, I always supported myself through my own efforts.